choosing a wine for dinner, what comes to mind? French, Italian, maybe Australian, Californian, Chilean, but Israeli?
Okay, everybody take one, okay?
It was the butt of jokes on Friends.
Ooh, Israeli champagne. And it's vanilla.
I got tenure. I didn't win the lottery.
But here in Israel, wines are actually enjoying a renaissance. In fact, there are now more than 200 wineries in Israel and more than 5,000 labels to choose from.
Israel wants the world to know. In March, the government launched a PR offensive to literally wine and dine critics and diplomats the world over. Mark Squires is one of the traveling critics.
I think that's the first step for Israeli wine, to make things people can enjoy, that seem typical, that are well crafted, and that make people suddenly go, "You're telling me that's from Israel?"
You got wines that actually express our terroir.
Haim Gan is their tour guide, known as the Grape Man in Israel. He says wine has been a part of Jewish culture for thousands of years.
When you're born, you have to drink wine. When you get married, you have to drink wine. Between Shishi and Shabbat, you have to have a taste of wine. In Passover, for goodness sake, you have to drink 4 glasses of wine.
But a lot of that is kosher wine, made to adhere to strict Jewish dietary laws.
The image of Israeli wine are boiled wine, brownish wine, sweety wine, let's say bad wines. Now this particular wine, it's purely fruit, didn't age in a barrique.
The Grape Man's mission is to transform the image of Israeli wine into good wine that just happens to be kosher.
We would look for a clear color.
He takes diplomats on a visit to the Tavor winery in the Galilee to experience Israel's terroir, wine talk for soil, weather, water, everything in the environment that affects the taste of wine.
The actual age of the vines gives us a unique flavor to the wine.
But on this muddy day, terroir isn't so great on the feet.
Israel has the right weather and the right soil for making good wine, but it has 2 disadvantages. It has a shortage of land and a shortage of water, and that is driving the price of Israeli wine higher and higher.
The average cost, $20 a bottle. Latvia's ambassador says he serves Israeli wine at all his functions despite the high cost.
Well, I don't like the price. The price, I think it's a little bit overpriced, but I still like the aromas and then the special characters of the wine.
The Grape Man brings his tour of wine critics to an ancient wine press nestled in Zuba's vineyards, one of dozens in the area dating from the Roman era. And of course, time to sample Zuba's Cabernet Sauvignon and Sauvignon Blanc. Lots of swirling, sniffing, sipping, and of course, spitting and note-taking. To really put Israeli wine to the test, we asked French critic Bruno Quignon.
L'avenir du vin en Israël.
The problem, he says, is that they are trying to give the market what it wants, which is what the European wines do already. They're not distinctive enough, he says. And that is the elusive goal. Israel needs to find that grape varietal that will bloom in its unique environment, transforming the merely good to great and worth the price.
And being very honest, we don't have an Israeli style. You can't taste the wine and say, this is an Israeli wine.
Right.
You can say that about Rioja.
Right, exactly.
Easily. A nice Brunello, yes. You will find it. A good Bordeaux, a good Bourgogne, a good Alsace, say, I recognize it.
Then the big day, the final stop on the tour, a wine bonanza.
This is the Tel Aviv Wine Expo, Israel's biggest showcase for wine, from the largest producers to the smallest boutique wineries. And for such a small country, there's no shortage of winemakers wanting to show off their latest collection.
While the public happily sips for pleasure, wine critics have to work, vetting dozens of wines a day. It's the speed dating of wine tasting. Critics and buyers have just minutes per winemaker.
I spit as we go along, but it's been a long day. I'm about done now.
We asked for his favorites and discovered Israel is making some progress to claim a wine style of its own.
There's a very nice cult producer named Wittgen. He's making a lovely Riesling. He's making a beautiful late harvest Riesling.
We headed straight to Wittgen for a sample and ended up buying a few ourselves. The business of wine, and for TV crews reporting on wine, is tough, but somebody's got to do it. Atika Schubert for Inside the Middle East, Tel Aviv.